Yo, what's up, Hivers? Happy 90s Friday, everybody. Hope you're good on this. What is today's date? I'm recording this Thursday afternoon, as per usual. The 15th, Leo Power Up Day. Although, with Leo temporarily being about the price of Hive or slightly above, I'm thinking a lot of people are probably selling. I'm sure there's some people powering up. Now is the time to sell. That's all I'm going to say about that. I should have talked about that in my market vlog this morning, but I wasn't really thinking about Leo. But whenever a tribe token is worth more than Hive, unless there's a circumstance where they're limited and there's some functional reason, if it's just a random pump, like wasn't Proof of Brain at one point worth more than Hive like years ago? It's just as much as I love the pimp community and the pimp token, I have at least 10K staked. If pimp went to 40 cents and was worth more than Hive, I would probably sell a big portion of my stake. The tribe projects are fun. Anyway, this is a conversation for a different kind of vlog. I'll talk about it this Saturday on the weekend wrap-up for the markets. But let's get into it. 90s Friday. So today, I wanted to focus on some bands that don't really fit into, like a lot of times I'll do a theme. I'll talk about Seattle bands, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, maybe punk bands, Rancid, Offspring, Green Day, or some more underground bands like the Bouncing Souls, Millencolin, 10 Foot Pole. Some bands some bands you don't. Or, really alternative stuff, that's similar to like the Smashing Pumpkins, like bands like My Bloody Valentine. What was the other one called? There's a couple bands from the same scene. The shoegaze scene is what it was later titled as, kind of the beginning of emo. But there's some bands that were just bands that had one or two hits, maybe even more, like the Stone Temple Pilots. Don't really fit into a box. The band Candlebox. The song Far Behind. It's a great song. It doesn't really fit into the box with Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. You know what I mean? Later, so let's just make that our first pick. Candlebox's 1993 record, self-titled Candlebox. The song is Far Behind. You probably know it. Left you far behind, yeah, 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 yeah. I didn't mean to treat you all so bad, but I did it anyway. I'm not really trying to sing. I'm just goofing around. Let's see, another band. Let me go in order of the years here. So let's go 1995 from the album American Standard, 7 Mary 3, the song Cumbersome. Do you guys remember that song? Again, one of these bands, it was a big hit. Big on rock alternative radio. But doesn't really fit into the box of like late 90s, early 90s, Seattle, punk, really alternative kind of art stuff. It's just kind of rock and roll. Honestly, they could probably fit in, and I don't mean this as an insult. They could probably fit in like 2002 with bands like Puddle of Mud, Nickelback, Chevelle. Which Chevelle actually had one album before their famous 2002 album that was actually produced by Steve Albini, and it's actually really good. I'll probably do that on a 90s Friday in the future, where I'll focus Fortune Friday on 90s Friday. I don't think I gave my usual intro. I apologize. But you got, Steve Albini produced a Pixies record in 1989. But it literally is the favorite band of like all the alternative rock 90s bands. So totally gets grandfathered in. Bush, their 1996 record, Nirvana's 93 record In Utero. And then you could throw Chevelle on there. That's Fortune Friday on 90s Friday. And I'm sure he did some other stuff in the 90s for a bonus jam. Maybe I'll do that next week. But yeah, you got kind of the underground alternative stuff. You got the Seattle stuff. You got the punk stuff. You got the kind of like what I consider like new wave. New wave never really died. Like a band like Garbage, definitely alternative rock, but you can kind of hear some new wave vibes to it. A band like No Doubt, their 1995 record, definitely some ska. But from their first album to their second album, which is the one that blew up, they have an album before that from 92 that like nobody ever heard of. You know, no radio play, no MTV play, at least not during normal hours. Tragic Kingdom, you know, you listen to the song Just a Girl, you can hear kind of a new wave kind of vibe with the keyboards and the synth. You know, so the 90s, you had a lot of scenes, and most of these bands that didn't fit in really had like one big hit. But Stone Temple Pilots, I think, are a good example. You know, they were from LA. They were not from the Seattle scene whatsoever. I'm not a huge fan. To me, you look at their singles, and two of them are trying to sound like Guns N' Roses. One of them is trying to sound like Pearl Jam. Another one's trying to sound like Nirvana. Another one's trying to sound like Soundgarden. Another one's trying to sound like Alice in Chains. And again, I'm not trying to bash them, but they just... It just wasn't my thing. You know? Some good songs, no doubt about it. But clearly a band a lot of people love, a lot of people like. So I'm going to go with their 1996 album. And I'm going to go with Tripping on a Hole in a Paper Heart, which was a single. Again, you know, I've heard some people try to kind of shoehorn them into like the early 90s Seattle stuff just because they, you know, their first successful album was 92. They had the follow-up in 94. This will be their third, which, by the way, is titled Tiny Music, Songs from the Vatican Gift Shop by Stone Temple Pilots. So that'll be pick number 3. And, yeah, you know, they kind of just were like this LA band doing rock and roll. They could have fit in the 80s, I think. And to me, they just kind of, I don't know, all their singles, I could pinpoint another band they're sounding like. Maybe it wasn't on purpose, I don't know. But pick number 4, Days of New, from the album with the same title, Days of New. The song is Touch, Peel, and Stand. This was a huge alternative rock radio hit. But again, kind of a sound you would think is like from the early 90s. Not really the Seattle sound, but just rock and roll. And kind of a one-hit wonder, you know? But just wanted to put a spotlight on some of these other bands, you know? Again, a lot of times I'll pick a particular scene, whether it's punk, Seattle, grunge, whether it's kind of the poppier side of alternative from like the late 90s, 97, 98, 99. And these are some bands I think that just kind of got left out, if that makes sense. And I'll find you guys a bonus jam. I'm just not sure. Let's see here. I'm just trying to see who else would fit. We got 7 Mary 3, Days of New, Candlebox. We got Stone Temple Pilots. I was thinking of throwing Bush in, but I think they kind of... I don't know if they really fit the description. So we got Candlebox, Days of New, 7 Mary 3. Where did 7 Mary 3 go? Oh, here we go. Yeah, Cumbersome. Yep. So those are the 4 picks. I'll have a bonus jam for you. Again, just trying to highlight some different stuff from the 90s. Basically, this has turned into Fortune Friday on 90s Friday. All alternative rock. I'm sure I'll mix it up with you guys. But, Nine Inch Nails, Green Day, Garbage. I focus a lot on these other bands. Here's a little something different. Songs you might have heard, but bands that were good. Not all of them are my general kind of thing, but I think they deserve a little love on 90s Friday. So that's what I'm giving them. And I love you guys. Later.